Welcome to the Lentil Intervention Podcast, talking all things movement, whole food nutrition and environmental wellness with your hosts, Ben and Emma.
Hello everybody, welcome to episode 5. My name is Ben Heidelberg, coming to you from Auckland, New Zealand, and I am joined as always by Emma Strutt from Boona in Queensland. Hello Emma.
Hi Ben, hi everyone, how are you going?
Good. Now before we start, we want to check in on you, the listener, and see how you're going.
We know it's a bit of a tough time at the moment. Hopefully everyone's staying sane at home. We hope you've been enjoying the episodes. Please do let us know if you want to hear anything in particular in upcoming episodes. Just reach out and we'll see what we can do.
That's right. So look up the Lentil Intervention on Instagram and Facebook and flick us a message. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast on your platform of choice so you don't miss any of the action. That includes Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, iHeart, and TuneIn. Right. So on this episode, we sit down with the incredible Dr. Andrew Little, a plant-powered doctor based on the Gold Coast. Andrew works as an anesthetic registrar, and while he devotes the majority of his day putting people to sleep for surgery, he spends the rest of his time trying to awaken people to the benefits of a plant-based diet. And let me tell you, he will be one of the very few guests we'll have on this podcast that truly sees the ill effects of poor lifestyle and nutrition choices on the inside of the body as the surgeons operate. He can totally verify what most of us will never see firsthand.
And he absolutely walks his talk when it comes to plant-based health and environmental advocacy. He serves as the Queensland ambassador for the health promotion charity Doctors for Nutrition, so he's my Queensland friend in that. He also has a really informative Instagram page where he's regularly posting about plant-based health and environmental topics, and he does a great job of dispelling some of those really frustrating vegan myths that just refuse to go away.
Yeah.
He's also the founder of BeHumane, and I absolutely love this initiative and the ethos behind it. 50% of their profits go to supporting animal and planetary welfare. In fact, for every bottle sold, a tree is planted in an effort to support global reforestation. So Andrew is just a wealth of knowledge on all things plant-based, and I really can't wait to get into this one. It should be good.
Let's do it. Dr. Andrew Little, sitting in the sunny Gold Coast, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and it is actually a very sunny and beautiful day today.
We're a bit spoiled in Queensland, Ben.
Oh, I'm so jealous, I tell you. Andrew, I think Emma and I were talking a little bit offline, and I think we kind of share almost the same start of the story. I first met you a little over a year ago in Brisbane. You were a presenter at the Young at Heart Symposium, which was a nutrition symposium. Key headline, Dr. Kim Williams, but you were the first speaker. And there were certain things that you spoke about which I thought, damn, this guy, I've got to go meet him and, have a chat. And here we are. And I think, Emma, you kind of knew Andrew before, but I think met him for the first time as well at the same symposium.
Yeah, well, we're both Queensland members of Doctors for Nutrition, but that's where we actually first met face-to-face.
Cool. So, Andrew, let's start just like any good story from the beginning. Tell us a little bit about you're currently an anesthetic doctor, but that wasn't your first, I guess, chosen career path. So tell us a little bit about your journey to becoming a anesthetic doctor and also becoming plant-based.
Yeah, so I grew up in Maclean in northern New South Wales, and I wasn't really ever the brightest person in my class. I always sort of tried hard, and I eventually sort of when I sat my high school certificate in New South Wales, it is, I got a reasonable mark to get into, believe it or not, I went and studied psychology.
Right.
I did a year, I did a year of psychology down in Newcastle, and I hated it. I don't know how else to say it. I'm fascinated in psychology nowadays. I'm absolutely fascinated in it, but the way it was kind of taught down there, I really wasn't that interested in it. It wasn't a real sort of nice year for me, and I decided that I sort of always had this inkling that I wanted to do physio. I never got the marks for it, so that sort of made me think, well, I'll just do psychology. I had the marks to do psychology. And I decided I'd look into other avenues. And I looked on the Gold Coast, Griffith University were also offering exercise science, and I knew that people use that as a bit of a bridge to get into physio. And so, yeah, I moved up to the Gold Coast after a year of psychology in Newcastle, and then got into exercise science. And my first year I worked really hard and got a good grade point average and made the switch into the double degree, exercise science and physiotherapy. And I worked as a physio for about for 2 years on and off. I was sort of part-time, but I went travelling straight away. I went over and lived overseas. I lived in Wales. And then whilst I was over there, I realised pretty quickly that physio wasn't for me either. And I think it's really hard trying to work out what you want to do at a young age, especially as a young sort of, I was a young male. I was sort of, I wanted to see the world. I wanted to do all sorts of things, and I had no idea what I wanted to do. And as once I sort of started working as a physio for a number of months, I liked it. I liked it because it allowed me to travel, and I was living overseas, and I really enjoyed that. It was the best thing I've ever done with my life.
Yeah.
Apart from getting married and having kids. Of course.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thanks for that, Emma. Yes. If my wife's listening, she'll be very happy to hear that. But yeah, it was at that point in my life, that was the best thing I ever did for my life, and I realised that there was a big roof over my head, and I wanted something more, and I didn't know what that was, and a few of my mates that I did physio with had gone straight into medicine, straight from physio and into medicine, and I didn't want to do that because I wanted to travel. But I sort of followed their lead, and I came back home. I moved in with my folks for about 5 weeks and studied for the GAMSAT. That's the entrance exam, and got through that, and went travelling again, came back, sat my interview and got in, and then got into med school. And probably in my second year of med school, that's when I met my beautiful wife. And I actually knew her before that, but that was our first date. And then I graduated med school in 2014, and since then became an anaesthetist. That's a mouthful. I heard you say that before, Ben. An anaesthetist. It's quite hard.
Yeah, never mind. We'll carry on.
But that's it, yeah. So then anaesthetics now for the last 4 years, and I just sat my final exam, and I passed the written. I've still got to pass the Viva just yet, and that's on hold at the moment because of COVID. So that's my background.
Oh, awesome. And what about the whole journey to a typical Western diet, lots of meat, lots of protein, as a young male would, to ditching meat and going plant-based like you are now?
Yeah, so that's an interesting story. So you're right. I grew up, like I said, in the country. Yeah. My parents own a small supermarket back there. I was eating meat and dairy with every meal. That's just how we thought it was back in those days. You're raised that way. Your parents are doing the absolute best thing they can for you. And I realised once I sort of, and to be honest, my mates have me on record at university. One of my good mates was married to a vegetarian, and I said to him, I would never date a vegetarian because I like meat too much.
Famous last words from a lot of people.
I think every vegetarian / vegan said that at some stage in their life.
I probably did.
Yeah,
too.
I did.
Yeah. And I went on my first date with my wife, who I realised at the time she ordered this tofu dish and I ordered a chicken stir fry. And I said to her, "Are you a vegetarian?" She said, "Oh, I actually don't eat any animal products. I'm a vegan." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I didn't really know what the term vegan was back then, but I said, I just said to her, I said, why are you a vegan? You know, what have you seen that I haven't? And that's was the turning point in my life. She is a very beautiful and very compassionate person, just even more beautiful on the inside. And she made the choice to stop eating animals at a very young age. At about the age of 18, she sort of switched on to what was going on in the world. And she said to me, watch Earthlings, watch Forks Over Knives. And since then I've watched things like Cowspiracy and a whole heap of other things that I think are all staples in people's, I guess, journey towards veganism, plant-based, whatever you call yourself. But I think once I started studying the impact of meat and dairy on the health of the planet, on the health of the animals, and on human health, I was really left with no other rational choice. And I just started making small changes. And I started, Sarah went literally, she went just, I'd say cold turkey, but cold tofurkey overnight. She went virtually vegan straight away. And it took me a little while, just because the thing is, food is such a culture. And I think this is what a lot of people don't understand. Yes, I think, you know, I don't think that veganism is the only solution to saving this planet, but I think whatever the solution is, it has to include veganism, or at least people starting to really reduce their meat intake. And, you know, so I just decided that I needed to start reducing my meat intake drastically. And so I just started having, first of all, I started having soy milk instead of cow's milk. I was drinking 6 litres of cow's milk a week. And I swapped to a soy, which I didn't like at first. I hated soy, and I couldn't believe how gross it was. I was like, how do people drink this?
You didn't have the initial concerns or the misconception, the misinformation, the myth about tofu not being good for you. You didn't have those concerns early on?
Oh, yeah. I had. So
tofu,
people would
soy
say
products and all that? Yeah.
Yeah. Estrogen, I'm going to get man boobs.
That's right.
And I realised that I just knew nothing about diet and health. I knew a lot about disease.
Yeah.
And like, I feel like I personally am a disease professional. I was
and
not
you're
a health
at med school. Come on, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
like we don't talk a single thing about nutrition or anything like that. But what med school really taught me, and what my anaesthetic degree has really taught me, is how to have a critical mind and how to critically think, and how to interpret literature. And that just as soon as I started looking at a few things, it just led to this insatiable hunger to get to the bottom of all this. Like, to get where you need, you know, the whole myths are you need calcium from cow's milk, you need protein from meat, you need omegas from fish, you need all these sort of things, where I was just like, where's all this come from? Like, you know, the brain needs meat to survive, and that's our human brain evolved from eating meat, whatever you believe in. I was like, all these things, I just felt like every time I studied something, I came up against a roadblock of people who would question me and say, well, what about this? And I didn't know enough to have all the answers. And I just kept studying it. And the more I looked into it, the more I realized, holy crap, if you look at our anatomy, our physiology, you look at our current health system, you look at the state of the planet, you look at the state of the animals, everything just points towards eating a plant-based diet, you know, at least a predominantly plant-based diet. We should be, you know, like, that's right. The latest research is suggesting we should really be only eating one meat dish a week, and we should really eat none if we really want to have the greatest impact, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, you also have, I don't know how much of a background, but I know you've in the more latter years, you've had some really amazing results in the running world, and ultramarathon running, something I personally relate to as well. At what point were you running competitively to some degree at uni, and so when you started making that change, was that something that factored into your decision making, or at least your quest for sourcing information, and if I don't eat meat, is that going to impact my performance? You know, where was your running in all this? Or was it running a byproduct of the fact that, hey, I'm actually feeling healthier, I'm a little bit leaner, and may as well take on a new challenge?
Well, yeah, I hate to disappoint you, Ben. I was never been the most competitive guy in the world. I love kite surfing. I love surfing. Kite surfing's my biggest sporting passion.
Yeah.
But running, I always ran. Like I always knew like I could run, and I did we did a couple of runs and did the Kokoda Challenge a bit. I really like the 100K runs. I did the Kokoda Challenge that's like a 96K run through the hinterland, and I really enjoyed that. And I knew that I sort of had a bit of a knack for running there. I carried a couple of injuries into one of those runs, but it wasn't until we did a run. It's a 100K run, but it was in sort of divided stages. We broke a Guinness World Record. We were the fastest team of 12 to run 1,000,000 meters in I can't remember how long. I have no idea what the record was, but it was under 3 days or something. But yeah, we just started training and we really just ramped it up massively. And the thing was, I was already vegan at this stage, and nothing was ever really going to change my mind. And I hadn't really ever. It's funny, when I went vegan, I didn't lose any muscle mass. I didn't lose any energy. I felt really good, to be honest. I felt amazing, and it was probably about 8 months after I went vegan that I started training for this run, and we just went off like any other team would. I started off the running with had surgery on my leg because I had this huge gash on my leg that from a surfing incident where a fin just chopped into my leg, and I had like 50 stitches or something. It was pretty gruesome. It was one of the worst fin chops I think I've ever seen, and a lot of people have ever seen in their lives. And I was hobbling around when we first started running. I was a month and a half behind anyone. I was kind of like I first did my first. I tried to do a 5K and I got 4K and my leg was really sore and it was really tight and stiff. And I thought, God, I don't know if I'm going to be able to do this. And I just kept running. I kept chugging away. And then I was getting the worst times out of anyone. I was way behind anyone. And then before I know it, I was just sort of eating really healthy, and my times just started improving. My recovery was amazing. I was starting to feel really good, and I was starting to feel quick. And I just kept pushing it harder and harder, and a lot of interval training. And I thought, this is really interesting. I'm going to see what I can do to my body here. Like, this is pretty fun. And my times just started getting better and better. And the boys were like, I was just slowly climbing the ladders. Like each week we were in this WhatsApp group. We had to post times. And then I gradually caught up to the top 4 runners, and then became the second fastest runner on the team by the end of it. And I was really hammering. And the guy who was faster than me he's quite a highly trained runner. He'd done a lot of running in his time. He's an absolute weapon. He was about sort of 4 kilos lighter than myself. I knew if I had to catch him, I would have to drop about 4 kilos, I reckon. But I wasn't prepared to do that because everyone goes, "Oh, look, you're skinny vegan," rah, rah. So but yeah, then I was running. After the run, I did a 10K and I ran it in about 36 minutes, just under 36 and a half minutes. And I was absolutely flying, and that was with less than 6 months training. So I felt like I had way more to give. I could have done a lot more. And we ended up breaking the Guinness World Record. I was cruised through it, no dramas. It was just a fantastic display of what you can do on a plant-based diet. And it's funny, I remember all my mates saying to me, or the whole group was sitting there talking about their nutrition on the day when we do this event and when we do this fundraiser. And they were like, I'm going to have 1 gram per kilogram of carbs or something like this. I don't know. They had all these formulas.
Yeah, it's usually 60 grams and then another 30 if you're using fructose. And there's all these
and so
established
they had all,
approaches.
Yeah, you'd know it better than I would. Yeah. And I just said to them, they're like, well, what are you going to do? And I was like, I'm just going to eat vegetables and
fruit.
And if I'm hungry, I'm going to eat some more. And that's how I've kind of lived my life the whole time. I honestly, just think, at the end of the day, I'm super happy just to cruise along. I don't really think about things in detail. I just use common sense and go with the flow. And all my mates are like saying to me, I remember one of them coming to me and said, "Oh, look, I've spoken to the exercise physiologist from some Olympic Australian rowing team who said you should really limit the amount of fibre you're eating because it will really impair, your running and all this sort of stuff." And I was like, okay, great. I'm just going to keep eating vegetables, and there's plenty of fibre in there. And I still, it's just
because a lot of their principles are still, and I know in New Zealand, especially at high performance, there's a big sort of stance towards the keto diet, the high fat, low carb diet, and that's their way of thinking, and these are sport physiologists. These are guys with PhDs, and with all due respect to them, I mean, these are smart, intelligent people, but that's their, incidentally, I know we're going a little bit off topic, but I was talking to a pro Xterra athlete just the other day, and he wants to go plant-based. His partner's completely vegan, and he's really intrigued, and he's tried it, but his coach is a well-known triathlete who's also got a PhD, and he's a high-fat, low-carbs, and he's just too scared to make the change. So it's their way of thinking.
And that's it. A lot of people are scared.
Yeah. Yep. 100%. I continue. It's amazing. Initially, I thought these was just tie kickers. People contact me, have a little conversation, and then you just don't hear from them. But I've realised in the last 6 months, I've had rugby league players from Australia contact me and say, "Hey, I'm really interested in this, going plant based." But there's this fear. And it's not just the fear, personally, lack of information about, will my energy level be affected? Will my bulk be affected? But it's actually the environment they're in, the players around them, the management, the staff. And, you had it, you're saying yourself, you were questioned by the rest of your team. Like, you don't want to be the weak link. You don't want to be the one letting the team down. But there you are. It proved a point. And you started with a massive deficit, the injury and the sort of behind in training and, the usual anecdotal evidence here, your recovery's improved and you've got there's no effect on energy and ability to keep wanting to keep going. And there you go.
The shining example. And I suppose no one in the blue zones would be counting their macros or worrying about their,
Exactly.
Yeah,
Emma, I think you're spot on. Like I sit there and all the time we look at food as these tiny individual components, and I get that from an athlete point of view, and I understand that, and I think that's absolutely fine. But not everyone's an athlete, and like hardly any of the population are athletic. And
when we talk about athlete, we're talking about professional athletes. That's a point.
And that's fair enough, But for the average person, like
the majority of the people,
if you're a weekend warrior and you want to go for a run, you really don't need to be getting into the weeds on nutrition.
It's like you get more than enough. And the thing is, I think what you're saying before, Ben, the fear. A lot of it comes from these big companies too. The meat and dairy industry create a lot of fear around those people. So, and the thing is, fear propagates further than hope. If people are scared,
that's right.
They're not going to do something, and they're scared because they think they're going to die if they go vegan. I was sitting there wondering, how am I going to go? And
it's fear of failure. It's fear of failure. Right, and that's a societal thing, right? You don't want to be seen as a failure, especially if you are a professional athlete in a professional setting, in a professional league. If you're the failure, you're out.
Exactly.
Your contract, you're out. You won't be renewed. You won't get that transfer. You won't get the endorsements. No, why rock the boat? Just go with the flow and carry on with everyone else. And then when I'm 40 years old, then I'll deal with the consequences of a bad diet. And that's.
But Andrew, you're doing a really, really great job of dispelling a lot of these myths. Like, I know you shied away from social media for quite some time, but since you've started your Instagram page, like, you've got some really fantastic content on there. Did you make like a conscious decision to start that page to get this message out, or what was the reasoning behind that?
Thanks, Em. Like as I told you, I went off social media probably for about 7-8 months. I remember just going, I'm deleting Facebook, I'm deleting Instagram, I'm done. And I think sort of on your natural progression to a plant-based diet and veganism, you start to get it can be depressing sometimes, because you start to look at the world the way it is. You start to look at the torture that comes to life. I often sort of joke about it and say it's like being plucked out of the Matrix when Morpheus gives you the red or the blue pill.
Yeah, that's right.
And I really think it is, like, and like if you look at the Matrix, it's just machines who are harvesting humans for energy, whereas we're harvesting, cows and sheep and pigs for energy, and it's a very similar concept, and it can be quite. You see the destruction on the environment. You think of things like COVID, all these zoonotic diseases. There's a million conspiracies as to where these come from, but at the end of the day, 3/4 of these diseases come from animals, and it's not just China. It's not just the Chinese wet markets. It's, Australia and America and all the Western cultures, we do very similar farming. We pump these animals full of antibiotics, and you just think, what are we doing to ourselves? And it gets pretty disheartening. And I just sat there and just thought, what can I do? Like, I can't even do anything about this. Like, the only thing I can do is just control what I do and what my family does. And I was like, that's not enough. And I just sit there and watch people talk rubbish and absolute rubbish. And I was like, what is going on with the world? Like, we've got all these people who are not educated, who are super confident in what they say, like the Dunning-Kruger effect. And, they're the most outspoken people. And I was like, I just can't take this anymore. And I said, to my wife, she was sort of at the time she had her own sort of Instagram profile where they talked about a lot of sustainable products for kids and things like that, like reusable nappies and things. And I thought, nah, bugger it, I'm just going to make my own page and see what happens. And it kind of just evolved. It just kept getting bigger and bigger. And now I feel like I've only got 4,000 followers, but which isn't huge compared to a lot of these influencers. But there's just some really beautiful people on there, and it really makes me happy to hear people come on there and send me a message and say, hey, I've just been plant-based for the last couple of weeks, and I've been following what you do, and I want to say thank you. And I'm like, wow, it's really quite fulfilling. And it's
a
nice
positive change,
Exactly. And I don't try and force it down people's throats. I don't try and say, meat is murder and you've got to go, because my wife didn't do that to me. My wife, she said yes to my marriage proposal when I was still eating meat, so she never judged me. She allowed me to come to the conclusion on my own. And I probably came to it more slowly than what other people would have. But
everyone gets there in their own way.
Yeah. And I think
but you've got, and this is a common thing we bring up, you've got the conviction, right? You're not doing this because of your wife or you're doing this as a fad or to get that record on the run. You're doing this because you've got conviction. You're believing what you're doing. And this passive-aggressive way that a lot of people take, I agree, doesn't work because you make people resent it. And your approach with your page and everything else, it's hang on, we can do this calmly and let people establish their own journey.
Yeah, and you're right, Ben. It's the reactance theory where if you tell someone they can't do something, their brain will perceive that as a threat of their freedom. And we we feel like our rights are violated, and our brain will do everything we can to restore that freedom. And you just go out and eat more meat or whatever, So I don't try and tell people to, just stop and point the finger at people. I just say, hey, this is what I'm doing. This is why I've done it, and which is what my wife did to me. She said, this is why I went vegan. And I was like, wow, instead of getting angry about it, and it's people can get very angry, and we've shown through all this, if you just purely by me ordering a vegan burger in front of people, that really questions people's morality. And I think that's because deep down we all know it's incredibly cruel. We all know that it's destroying the planet, and the evidence is just, it's plain as day now. And back when I was sort of transitioning, it was coming out, but right now in our modern society, the evidence is right in front of your eyes. You just have to open your eyes. And so, it's harder for people to keep their eyes shut. And it just by ordering that vegan burger, you start to question people's morals. And we know that just releases a flood of adrenaline and noradrenaline into their amygdala, and their defense mechanisms come up, and they get quite emotional and aggressive. And instead of getting aggressive, I just said to my wife, "You're right. I always just accept my flaws. I think it takes the best thing that you can do in your life as a human is understand your own flaws. I think that's the most important lesson in life."
Yeah. Hey, behind a great champion, there's always a great source of inspiration, and that's your wife, Sarah. So good on her,
Yeah, mate. Honestly, she's the most introverted human in the world, but she's super emotionally intelligent. She understands her emotions really well. She understands my emotions really well and tells me how I'm feeling sometimes. But yeah, she's the most special person, and she's taught not only me but so many people. Like her whole family, when she grew up in Mount Isa in cattle country. Her whole family, her brother hunted pigs, had guns, and they all ate lots of meat, and they all laughed at her when she went vegetarian to start with, and then she went vegan pretty quickly, and they all laughed at her. But now her whole family's vegan, so
there we go.
Catches on.
Yeah.
And just on that, I mean, you've got a beautiful son, Harrison, with Sarah, and he's been raised plant-based from birth, and you've got another little chickpea on the way now. So congratulations on
congrats.
that. Before I ask my question, I just want to set it up by saying to anyone that's listening, Dietetics Association of Australia and the American Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics have both released position statements now acknowledging that vegan and plant-based diets are healthy at every life stage, including infancy and childhood and adolescence, as long as they're well planned. And honestly, what diet shouldn't be well planned, regardless of whether they're vegan or omnivore? But did you ever have any concerns about, raising your kids plant-based?
For sure, Emma. Yeah, it was probably the most irrational question that I ever put forward to my wife was, what diet are we going to raise our kid on? I was vegan by that stage, and I was convinced that I was healthiest for me, and healthiest for the planet, healthiest for the animals. But I was like, I don't know about raising our kid on a plant-based diet. I was like, surely he's going to need milk and things like that. And you think, God, how irrational was I? Like, I was still learning and still experimenting. But my wife said to me, well, you should probably think about that now, because I want to raise my kid on a plant-based diet, and that could be a bit of conflict for us. And so I did some reading into it, as I always do. I just think it's so important to do your own research and the
good
right
sources
research
as well. Yeah,
exactly. Looking at the right stuff rather than just some influencer who's got 50,000 followers who thinks they know. And I realised that it was absolutely fine. And I can tell you right now, I've never been more satisfied in a plant-based diet for a little kid. Like this little guy, I mean, you guys have seen him.
He's a genius.
I said to him the other day, what shape has 10 sides? He's like decagon. He knows nonagon. He knows octagon. He counted to 180 the other day, like literally. And it's a little bit scary at times. You're like, Jesus, he is onto it. He's a real academic, and all his milestones, he's completely all over them. I sort of watched him closely to start with, just because I was still like, okay, it's a little bit of unproven territory for myself.
Yeah, fear of failure again.
Yeah, exactly. It's fear. Mate,
and
with
the biggest risk, a newborn.
Exactly. So, yeah. Huge risk. You want the best for your kid, and this is the thing. Like, every parent wants the best for their kid, and if you really want the best for your kid, then you need to start thinking about the environment, because
the future they'll grow up in.
Their future is in absolute danger. And if you think that climate change isn't real, well, I can tell you right now, there is an avalanche of research to show that you are wrong, and it is happening in front of our eyes. Our country has just went through the biggest drought. And then it burnt to the ground, and then it was flooded, and now we're being ravaged by a pandemic, and oceans are rising, corals are bleaching, rainforests are just disappearing. Like, I don't know what else to tell people. You know, it's just like I look at Harry every day and I see how happy he is, and he's my main driver for what I do. You know, I know that I'm healthy, and I say to people, I say that even if a plant-based diet is equally as healthy as any other diet that's the healthiest on the planet, well, even if it's definitely not more unhealthy. So even if it's equally as healthy, should it not be the default diet, given that
of all
it's
the other
best
benefits
for the planet and it's best for the animals? It reduces zoonotic diseases. It's just it's common sense, you know. Like, and that's just how I approach my life. If something makes sense and someone can prove to me why we should be doing something, then I do it.
Yeah. Now, Andrew, let's talk a little bit about the work you do currently in hospital, in surgery, because there's quite a lot of things you've seen. You know, you're up close and personal in a theatre, in an operating theatre, that is, and you can see firsthand the evidence of poor nutrition choice.
Oh, definitely. I see firsthand the evidence of just poor lifestyle choices, and as I always say to people, I'm like, you know, it's not just about diet for me; it's about everything. You know, lifestyle in terms of I meditate now, avoid stress, form strong family connections, sleeping over 6 hours a night. We know that sleeping less than 6 hours a night increases your mortality rate.
We say 8 to 9 hours. 8 to 9 should be pushing.
As long as you're getting 7, you're doing okay.
7 and up is good. 7 and up is good, Emma. Yeah, that's well, you know, there's going to be so many resources, and then, you know, other things like avoiding cigarettes and alcohol. I stopped drinking, and my biggest frustration. I love what I do in the hospital system, and I love my job, and I'm very thankful for my job, and I'm the first to defend the medical system when a lot of people have a lot of distrust in it. And I get what the people's frustrations are. A lot of the time we don't really promote health as well as we should, but we really know how to treat disease. But I see so many people come in who just shouldn't be there, and you know, they don't have to be there. And I think the one sort of surgery that comes to mind is a coronary artery bypass graft. People talk about their cabbages. You know, they just sort of say, "Oh, I've just had a quadruple bypass," and I'm like, do you know what that entails? Like, I would put people to sleep, you know, to have their bypass, and they literally, I don't know how to paint a picture, but you know, they're literally laying there asleep. We put an ultrasound down their esophagus so we can see their heart, and then we put a saw through their sternum and open up their sternum, and then we take the vein from their legs and we turn those veins into some new arteries in their heart. And people say, "Oh, yeah, I've just had my quadruple bypass." And I just think, geez, that's insane. And if you look at some of the data, you know, just being healthy and you know, eating right and sleeping and exercising and doing all those things, you'll completely avoid that. And people often say to me, well, you know, that's an extreme way of life. And I'm like, well, what's more extreme? Cutting your chest open and putting some new arteries on your heart, or changing your
some vegetables.
And that was one of the first times I sort of realized that was I met one of my anaesthetic bosses when I was in Mackay in my very first year of anaesthetic training. His name was Graham Evans, and I'll never forget him. But he was we're sitting down in the tea room. He was my consultant for the day, and we're sitting down in the tea room. And I looked over, and he had this big plate of veggies and rice with some chickpeas in it. And I looked at it, and I went, "That looks like a vegan dish, like 100%." And I said, "Oh, that looks pretty good." And he goes, "Yeah, it's just last night's leftovers." And I said, "You a veggie?" He goes, "Yeah, I don't eat any animal products. I eat a plant-based diet." And I was like, same. And I was just sort of transitioning at that stage, and and I said, well, why is that? And he started telling me all this evidence, everything that I'd read, and I was like, yep, read all this, and it was just really nice. That was the first moment when I had someone who I look up to and a boss in my life that, you know, you sort of see these consultants and see how much training they've done and how much study they've done, and you sort of base your practice on these guys, and to have a boss that believed in the same things as me, I was like, wow, I'm not stupid. I'm not just doing this. And he put his dad was booked for a bypass, and he put his dad onto a plant-based diet and completely reversed his coronary artery disease. He's come off all his medications, and he's got angiographic evidence of his coronaries reopening. And in fact, there's lots of studies. There's a study in the JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of our best medical journals, showing that some simple lifestyle changes and a plant-based diet will completely reverse coronary artery disease. And I'm like,
that's right.
It's pretty amazing.
Oh, honestly, it's I don't know how to put it. I mean, okay, this is a dangerous question, but I mean, you say a lot of people look towards the medical system, GPs and other health professionals for advice, but really, who is? How do I put this question? Who should be leading the education in correct way of eating? And it's not just eating; it's lifestyle choices. I mean, is it people like yourselves, Emma, or is it where should it start?
Well, I mean, we're the ones trained to do that.
But you're there because people come to you because they already have a problem. How do you get in front of it? How do you stop having patience?
Well, I think it's good that there's such a push for lifestyle medicine. Like, that's a growing movement, and I'm so glad to see that is actually starting to catch on. I've been going to the conferences for the last few years, and every single time the conference is bigger. So that's really promising. It's just, I suppose it's about getting the word out and educating more medical professionals, and even, more dietitians, educating them on the benefits of plant-based, because a lot of them aren't fully aware of all the benefits.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, if you don't know, you don't know, right? So.
And I agree with you, Emma. I think the hardest thing is, Ben, to answer your question, I definitely think it's a multidisciplinary team. So you need sort of everyone on board. It's not just sort of one person, but I think everyone needs to. And I don't know one doctor who. Well, I do know some doctors who just don't follow any evidence, but not many doctors wouldn't say eat more fruit and veggies. And the hardest part is that this is, a lot of people will always say, oh, you got to die of something, and they'll smoke and smoke and smoke, and then I'll see them in clinic, and they're about to have part of their lung chopped out, and because they've got lung cancer, and I'll say, oh, do you smoke? And they go, no, well, I quit now. And I think, well, it's a bit late now. They quit once they've already got cancer. No one's quitting before it. And this is the hard part. We're addicted to food. We're addicted to calories. And we know that every time we eat, we get this dopamine release in our brain that stimulates our reward pathway and encourages us to keep eating. And that, if you believe in evolution, then that is an evolutionary trait to eat a high-calorie feed.
It's a survival mechanism.
Exactly. And it's really hard to overcome that. It's really hard to overcome these unhealthy behaviors because food tastes so nice, exercise is hard, and to change people's beliefs, it takes a lot. And we know that people don't really want to change that much. It takes a lot of energy for the brain to change its behaviors, and the research shows that it's really hard to convince someone what is the right thing to do. And this is the whole theory of instant gratification versus delayed gratification. No one wants to consider the benefits of a healthy lifestyle, 50 or 40 or 30 years down the track. They just want the instant gratification of the food that they're eating, that big juicy burger that's full of fat and salt and sugar and whatever. That's what stimulates the brain. And so that's what we're up against. And a lot of people point the finger at the medical system, but the medical system has evolved to meet a demand.
That's right.
And humans, as much as I tell people to be healthy, they don't really listen, and that's the hard part. There are a select few that will listen, but it's trying to get people to change their mind, and it's really hard, and that needs to be a multidisciplinary team, I think.
Yeah. Now, talking about eating poorly versus eating well, we've also spoken about your passions, the environment, animal welfare, and so on. You've recently launched a smoothie booster, BeHumane. Tell us a little bit about that story, what it's all about.
So this was when we I was in Mackay, and Sarah and I were both we had this idea of owning a farm. We really loved Edgar's Mission and farm animal sanctuary. we really loved the idea of it. We went and visited Farm Animal Sanctuary, and we were just like, oh, that's what we want to do. And we had these ideas of having a little cafe on there, and you'd say, you have coffee with the cows, and we wanted, thinking of putting some shirts on the cows saying, these tits are mine, leave them alone, something like that. And we really had all these great ideas, and we thought it would be so fun to do something like that, kind of like, the farm at Byron Bay, but without the meat. It's kind of, that place is a bit counterintuitive to me.
Yeah.
While you're eating your bacon sandwich and saying how cute the pigs are. But we wanted to make it like something like that, and we just realised how much work it was. And I was like, God, that would just be too hard. I wouldn't be able to do it with my job. It's a full-time gig. And then, so I thought, well, what can we do? And I thought about it for a while, and I realised I was throwing all these ingredients into my smoothie, just things that you not necessarily can't get on a plant-based diet. That you can get them on a plant-based diet, but just things that I knew I needed to be a bit more careful of. Yep. And I thought, why don't we just bottle these ingredients up and just turn it into, like, because I didn't really like the idea of taking all these supplements. I was like, it just kind of defies the purpose of eating food, and like, you're taking all these supplements all the time. I thought, why don't we just bottle this up and we can sell it and give the profits to something cool like animal welfare and like Edgar's Mission. And so over about 3 years, I just sort of decided that this is what I was going to do. I went looking into it, and it was a real passion of mine. I was really keen to get it going, and it's been up and running for a year now, and it's slow, but it's just really fun. We've given, over sort of $400 now to $500 now to animal welfare in the last 3 months, and before that even more. And it's just been such an awesome journey. We're now sort of partnered up with Happily Ever After. We just sort of had to make that change just because we really needed someone to sort of promote it, and it was a bit hard for Edgar's Mission to do that, given they were such a big organisation. And I still stay in touch with them, and they're beautiful people. But Michelle at Happily Ever After is just an amazing human, and what she does is just exceptional, and it makes me feel awesome to be able to give her some money. So we're hoping it takes off a little bit more, and we can sort of continue on with that. And we sort of, we just take enough profits just to keep BeHumane running. And we've also sort of joined up with One Tree Planted, and we plant a tree for every bottle sold. So we're certainly nowhere near in the green, as we would sort of say, but at the end of the day, it's just something that is a passion project of mine. It wasn't about making money for us. It was just about giving back and doing something cool. So that's where BeHumane came from.
Amazing concept, and I love every bit of it. Talk to us a little bit more about the product itself. What's in it? Why it's in there? Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, so I obviously followed the rabbit down the hole in terms of what you need when you eat a plant-based diet, and you'd probably be able to say a lot more than I would about all this. But I guess we sort of it gets so confusing. So many people have so many ideas, and it really just shows to me that the research is a little bit scattered. But I guess the 4 things that really stood out to me where the research wasn't scattered on was, first of all, B12, and you definitely need a B12 supplement on a plant-based diet. And that's not pure. That's not because of our diet. That's purely because of modern farming practices and the way we farm. B12 is produced from a bacteria in the ground, and animals get it when they eat stuff from the ground. We would have got it when we ate from the ground or we drink from fresh water streams. But we sanitize our water now. We chlorinate it, so it kills the bacteria in the water. It also kills waterborne diseases, but also pesticides. So,
and even in the meat industry, they're now fortifying or supplementing.
Yeah, they do have to supplement the
feed
animals
for the animals. So.
Exactly. They're throwing cobalt on the ground. Cobalt is an activating factor. It's called cobalamin. So you're not getting your B12 naturally from beef either. You probably get it naturally if you ate meat from an incredibly organic farm, but we know that is just not sustainable. These organic farms, free roaming cattle. Although whilst I think that should be the bare minimum we do for these animals, let them run free. if we let all these cattle run free, the 50 to 60 billion animals that we kill every year, if they all ran free, that we'd literally, if you do the calculations, you need about 8 more Australias of land to grow these animals, and it's just insane. But so you're not getting your B12 naturally through that either. So at the end of the day, whether you eat meat or you eat vegetables, you've got to supplement with B12, and 25% of Australians are deficient in B12. So it's not just, and only 2% of the world are vegan. So it's not just vegans, but
absolutely,
yeah. So I think B12 was a big one for me. How much you need? Well, God, I was using a tablet and going, holy crap, you need like these tablets like 1,000 mics. I was thinking, why am I having 1,000 mics a day when, the recommended daily intake's only like 2.4 mics? And I just chased the rabbit down the hole. I spoke to Emma a lot about it actually too, and chased the rabbit down the hole with that one, and realised that obviously it's almost like our bodies are designed to just eat little bits of B12 here and there and everywhere, with our meals, just have a little bit here and there, because the absorption process is saturated very, very quickly. So,
but the body stores it as well. So I think,
the body,
I don't know, Emma, you I don't know if you know offhand, but I seem to go off a figure of about 2,500 micrograms a week. So depending on the brand that you're buying and how many pills you got to take to meet that,
it comes back to the absorption rate. So if you're having a smaller amount, you'll absorb more.
True.
But if you want to have those massive amounts, you only need to take it twice a week.
Yeah.
But Andrew did, as he mentioned, we had a bit of back and forth about this, and he did really thorough research on this. So I think the amount that you've got in your supplement is fantastic.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. So it was either, I agree with you, Ben. I was like, well, if I want to just do a one-off dose, it would be, 1,000 to 2,000 mics once a week, once or twice a week, depending on your age and whatever.
Yeah.
But if you wanted to do it daily, then I worked out it was probably going to be about 50 mics a day, and we designed the supplement so it would be dailies, and we didn't want to over. People just think the more the better. It's not that's not the
not
case.
Always,
but
no.
We just said, well, look, we'll just make it 100 mics to double what the actual guidelines would suggest, and so we said 100 mics a day. Even if you had it 4 times a week, I'm sure it would probably be enough. I was pretty happy with that, and I've been taking that supplement now for the last year and a half, and my B12 and everything's absolutely fine. So
me too. It's my only supplement now.
Yeah, it's
perfect on my blood.
So I think, and then the other ones. So iodine was a big one for me, and a lot of people. I didn't really want to take an iodine supplement. I liked the idea of just having some seaweed in my diet. It's got a lot of health benefits. And I realised that there was a lot of kelp had a really bad name because it had a lot of iodine in it, really high doses, and people were worried about it. And I thought, well, it'd be okay if you're just taking a small amount, and there's no problems with kelp. It's not bad at all. Everyone's like, oh my God, it's toxic, because it's got so much iodine. Well, it's not toxic if you're only having a little bit. So we just pop a little bit of iodine in there. It's not my only source of iodine in my diet. The recommended daily intake is 150 mics a day. There's only 100 mics in it. We get that tested, that kelp. And so then the vitamin D was something which was another one in there that I'm not super convinced you need a vitamin D supplement. I don't know where you sit on that, Emma. I suppose if you're out in the sun for 30 minutes a day, which I would take Harry down to the beach and we'd just sort of go for a swim. So we'd be out there for 30 minutes, not in the middle of the day, obviously. I don't recommend that because obviously, but we're all covered up nowadays. So yeah, vitamin D is probably a good source, and Emma would be able to sort of tell us more about that. But if you're getting enough sunlight, then you don't need to worry about it. But at the end of the day, if you can get a plant-based supplement, then why not? And it was really cheap to throw it in. It was from lichen, which is just a little moss. And so we threw that in just to ensure people were getting it. And then the only other thing was omega-3s. And this is probably the biggest debate of our of the plant-based scene. Everyone's like, do you need a DHA supplement? Do you need an EPA supplement? How much can the body convert? Well, this is my opinion. My opinion is that I don't take a DHA. I don't take an EPA. My brain health has been fine. I haven't had DHA and EPA for the last 6 years since I was vego 6 years ago, and I was only really eating a little bit of cheese, and that was it. And then I've been vegan for the last 3.5, 4 years, and I haven't had DHA and EPA. And they say, you need it for brain functioning. Well, I seem to have got through my the hardest exams in my life.
Yes.
So my brain's absolutely fine. If you look at all the data, Cochrane reviews, they've done so many systematic reviews in the Cochrane database on DHA, where they've looked at longevity, no difference. And if you look at the guidelines, it's like you've got to have 250 milligrams a day. To get that, you have to eat fatty fish, 3 or 4 times a week. I was like, geez, I don't know anyone who was eating that much fish a week unless
you lived literally on the coast and were a fisherman.
Yeah. So and I realised that vegetarians and vegans have low DHA and EPA levels, but what does that mean?
But that's not
exactly.
It's like iron levels. It's
yes,
exactly. A lot of vegans, their iron levels are dangerously low. But low in what spectrum? A meat eater spectrum.
Well, they're not dangerously low. Like the majority of vegans and vegetarians, they still have perfectly.
Oh no! When I say dangerously
normal
low,
status, it's just at the lower end.
That's what you get told,
which is beneficial.
Yeah. No, you get told that, but
exactly.
it's what people don't realize is your body is able to self-regulate plant-based iron, so you get told you're dangerously low and you have to go on a supplement. Meanwhile, it's like, no, I'm actually fine. This is where we should be. So it's again, that misinformation.
And we know that, like heme iron is one of the potential mechanistic factors for bowel cancer and things. We're sort of starting to look into those, there's a lot of mechanistic studies and things like that. And if you look at all those pathways, I don't get too deep down in all those pathways because I know that, I'm not super concerned because I know that it's the best thing for the environment and the animals, and I know it's good for my health as well, so I don't think about it too much. But like you said, my iron levels were absolutely fine. I was running 10K in 36.5 minutes, and I was just eating some spinach leaves. I throw a bit of kale in my smoothie in the morning. I get plenty of iron, and I feel like where people might have a bit of trouble is where if they go straight from eating a lot of meat and relying on heme iron to then just going vegan straight away. I don't know if there might be a upregulation of absorption of non-heme iron.
It's also how they change their diet. If they're replacing a piece of meat with a fake piece of meat, thinking, well, I'll still get my iron from that, well, then, that's probably the problem.
Whereas, or just taking the meat away.
Yeah. Or rather than changing the composition of your plate altogether.
Yeah.
And then you...
Yeah, sorry, Benny. I was just going to say that the DHA and EPA debate is it's a really tricky one. And look, there's no real good data. If you look at kids, there's Cochrane review on this, and Cochrane, for people who are listening, the Cochrane database is one of the most sort of the highest levels of evidence you could really have. We love to see a Cochrane review. It's a systematic review where you combine data from just stacks of studies that are as unbiased as they possibly can, and they're independently reviewed, and then they put it together and come up with conclusions. And they did studies where they put kids, like DHA was a huge thing for kids in formula and in formula feeds and things like that, and they looked at kids who were given who were formula fed, so they weren't getting any DHA and EPA from their mum because they weren't breastfed, but they were getting they were drinking formula milk without DHA versus kids drinking formula milk with DHA, and they followed them up 8-10 years later, and no change in cognition, no change in brain size, no change in anything. And I was kind of like, well, it just doesn't make sense. Like everyone's like, you need it for brain function. I was like, well, if the age from like 0 to 4 years is the most important for a kid to have, omega-3s and a DHA, and it just, why then are they doing okay without DHA? And it just, if you look at the research, mums can upregulate their conversion of ALA to DHA when they're pregnant. Kids can do it, and it just doesn't make sense to me. Sure, there's a few case studies and some evidence to show that some people don't convert it, but there's some evidence to show that a lot of people can't convert a lot of things. So I don't know. It's still out there. If I find any evidence that says otherwise, then
you might change your ingredients a little bit, but until then,
at the end of the day, I might just add a DHA supplement. But it's one of those things where, I think a lot of it came from the Adventist Health Study and the Epic Oxford, where they're looking at people who are eating fish. The pescatarians tended to do better on certain things than the vegans. And this is just a lot of observational data, and I love that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, like, they just sort of, to say, it was just from DHA, from the fish, then who knows? But, like, we know eating fish has a lot of other problems.
Toxicity
like
issues, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. To say it was DHA, there's really no good studies to say it. So we're sort of just clutching at straws on that one. So until I see my body feels fine, and that's how I base my life.
Well, I'll tell you what, all 4 ingredients I'm personally a massive fan of. Omega-3, I have my tablespoon of flaxseed in my porridge every day. B12 for obvious reasons. Iodine, for the last few months, I've actually gone into the habit of sprinkling a little bit of kelp flakes on my main meal every day to get that iodine.
Yeah.
And D3, I know we're gonna have an episode on that, because Emma's been involved in some research with that. But for me personally, in the wintertime, I take it. And
Ben, you could simplify your routine there by just having 1 scoop of BeHumane.
I think I should get myself onto this. Certainly would simplify my life. Yeah. But no,
I'll have to get you on the BeHumane books, Emma, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
No, look, I think on a serious note, Andrew, everything about it is just fantastic. It's a great story, the concept behind it, what you do with it, the fact that you're contributing back to the planet.
Absolutely.
I was going to say society, but to the planet. And at the same time, we're ensuring that some of the key nutrient components that can sometimes be a little bit difficult, or can be a little bit lacking, we're getting them, whether it's in a smoothie or add it to your porridge or however you want to have it. I think it's a great concept. So well done to the two of you and Sarah with that.
Thanks, mate. It hasn't been easy, because I was always very tentative to promote it on my page, because I didn't want to come across as a salesman. I believe in the product myself, and I don't, and it's exactly what I have. I haven't had anything for the last year and a half other than that. But it's hard. You got to find a line between not looking like a salesman. And to be honest, this is the thing. It's about the animals for me, and that product really resonates how I live my life and what I'm about. And so it's quite nice to have it, and it's making a difference, and people are loving it. So there's a lot of people who write to me and say thank you, and I love it myself.
Oh, and I've seen you repost a few posts from others that take it, non-spawn posts, and it's genuine. So why not?
Exactly.
To the listeners out there, get onto it.
We'll see, and look, that's the thing. Like, I always sort of think that in the future, if my job could evolve to the point where I travel around the Australia educating people and things like that, then I would love to do something like that, or helping the animals, helping the planet. That's something I'd like to do in the future. But we'll see what happens.
No, brilliant, Andrew. It's been an absolutely inspiring conversation with you, and like I said right at the beginning when I first met you, there's some elements that I really related to, and but your story is just it's real. Your journey to becoming plant-based, to becoming someone that is concerned and wants to do something about a lot of the challenges we find ourselves as a society in terms of the planet, animal welfare, and so on, and the great work you do in the health system as well, and the education. So there's so much that you're doing, you and your family, and you're a true inspiration. And thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure to be here with you guys, and like I always sort of say, I think the thing that really keeps me going, and I just think, like, I'm no different than anyone else. I've just got a unique set of skills, and it just helps to have that MD credential behind me, because if I didn't use those credentials to help benefit this planet, then I wouldn't die happy. And I realized that pretty quickly, and I know that one day my little boy is going to grow up, and he's going to look around him at the world, and he's going to ask me why our planet's in such bad shape. And I honestly, as corny as it sounds, I want to be able to look him in the eye and say to him, I did everything I could to try and help that. And it just makes sense if you just if you just add up the facts, if you sat down with a list of pros and cons about a plant-based diet, I guarantee you there would be zero cons. Just the only thing you could put in the cons list is your loss of taste for a lot of people. You know, the meat and dairy is very tasty for a lot of people, and it was a big thing for me. But the more you go down through this journey, the less you start to worry about the things you miss, and the more you focus on the beautiful things you do for the world. And that's just what keeps me going. And if I could just say anything to people who are thinking about it, just give it a go and just start going down that pathway. It's a different journey for everyone. We're not here to point the finger at anyone. It's just about getting people started, and it's just such a beautiful journey to be on.
Yeah, perfectly said, Andrew. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Lentil Intervention podcast. If you found this interesting, make sure you subscribe and share it with your friends.